Well, hello there, Space Monkeys. Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about some more chaos in this country, some mayhem, some extreme violence. There was a shooting at a school in Texas earlier today. Updated reports are that there are 21 dead people, 3 teachers, and 18 students in an elementary school. And the identity has been revealed as an 18-year-old male named Salvador Romas. Details are unfolding here, but just another day here in the United States. The first part, we're just going to talk about this story and the updates and what you need to know. And then I'm going to have a conversation with myself, and you guys can comment below if you agree or disagree about how the Republicans and the Democrats will both politicize this differently, and how they'll politicize it, yet when they take power, like for instance the Democrats have power right now to do whatever they want in terms of gun control, they won't actually do anything. They'll posture and virtue signal on Twitter like they give a fuck about a bunch of poor kids getting shot, but when they have all the power in the world to help prevent things like this, they don't even try to get what they rhetorically claim would help prevent this. So we're going to talk about how both parties are full of shit. And then lastly, I will again make my argument, which I made in a previous episode a couple of days back, about radicalism and extremist violent activity. Particularly, I was talking about white supremacy in the previous video, but this applies here. How we can prevent these types of shootings and hyperviolence in America. Spoiler alert, it's not what either the Republicans or the Democrats are saying, especially not on its own. A lot of extremist activity comes from a lot of poverty. You fight poverty and you end up fighting a lot of these radical extreme events. And I will make that argument as best I can succinctly at the end of this episode. So let's read you here from The Guardian, get you updated on this. Swear to fucking God, it's every day. It's every day. This is why I have to take a sabbatical every 6 months from this show and take a hiatus, because I can't read this stuff all the time. It seems like it's happening all the time, and if it's not kids getting shot in schools, it's journalists being shot in the head by Israeli forces, it's Palestinians getting killed and brutalized, it's Yemenis kids being killed by the Saudis, it's fucking extreme poverty and people sleeping under bridges, it's people committing suicide in droves because nobody's giving them mental health care in this country and they've been left out to dry by their government. It's kids being blown apart by U.S. bombs in Kabul because we misdiagnose their father as a terrorist and we kill his whole fucking family and blow everybody apart. I can't. It really is not easy covering this stuff all the time. It takes a tremendous emotional toll. But I don't want to bury the lead. Texas school shooting. Death toll has risen to 21, including 18 children, says state senator. The latest updates. This is from The Guardian. Updated at 1:16 today, the gunman, an 18-year-old male in Uvalde, was reportedly shot and killed by officers responding to the scene. 1:16 p.m., Texas school shooting, the key facts. It is a horrific day for gun violence once again in the U.S. after an 18-year-old man in Texas opened fire in an elementary school, killing 18 students and 3 teachers. Here's what we know so far. The shooting occurred in Uvalde, Texas, a town of about 15,000 people, about 85 miles west of San Antonio in southwest Texas. The shooter opened fire at Robb Elementary School. Its school district, Uvalde School District, has an enrollment of just under 600 students. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said on Tuesday that the suspected gunman was 18-year-old man named Salvador Romas. Abbott said that the shooter is quote-unquote deceased, and it is believed responding officers that killed him. The man had a handgun and may have also had a rifle, the governor said. Biden to share a statement on the Texas shooting. Joe Biden will be speaking from the White House momentarily about the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Stay tuned for updates. Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez says death toll is now at 21 in mass shooting. The death toll in the mass shooting targeting an elementary school on Tuesday has now risen to 21, according to Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez, including 18 children and 3 adults. Speaking on CNN, Gutierrez relayed the new numbers as he was told by Texas police officials in a private briefing. Quote, Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez, Democrat, who represents Uvalde, Texas, where the elementary school shooting took place, says on CNN that the death toll is now 21, including 18 people. Gutierrez called the event, quote-unquote, devastating. So let's talk about, obviously this is horrible, and it's a common occurrence in this horrible, topsy-turvy hellscape that we live in America nowadays. But let's talk about what the Democrats are going to talk about and what the Republicans are going to talk about when they politicize this shit. And you guys know how this goes. The Republicans are going to claim that it's a mental health epidemic in this country and that mental health would have helped prevent school shootings like this. The Democrats, however, will claim that we don't have enough gun control and that we needed to either, if you're kind of an extremist on this, you want to take guns away from people like Beto O'Rourke, or if you're sort of not so extreme, but you still want common sense gun control like Bernie Sanders, you want things like closing the gun show loophole, you want to ban bump stocks, you may go so far as to want to ban assault rifles entirely. Either way, all of the Democrats want to do gun control, and the Republicans want to do mental health. That's their talking points, right? And you can set your watch by it. Go look on Twitter right now. All the Republicans are echoing the same thing with the Democrats. Now, what I'd like to point out is that the Democrats are in power right now, and if they wanted to, they could pass whatever they want to in terms of gun control, and they're not going to do shit. When the Democrats are in power, they could do whatever they say they want to do to prevent stuff like this in terms of gun control, but they fucking won't. Likewise, the Republicans, who will likely have a majority, maybe even a filibuster-proof supermajority come 2024, say they're for mental health. Yet, are they going to pass legislation that makes mental health care free in this country, or that reduces or eliminates the cost of prescription drugs that these people need, these people that have schizophrenia or mental disorders that make them prone to acts of extremism? Are they going to make it easier or even free for these people to get their meds and for them to see a doctor at no cost, like a Medicare for all type bill, but maybe just for mental health care and for prescription drugs meant for mental health patients? Are they going to do that? No. Both of the parties, the elitist bourgeoisie parties that are in the duopoly, don't actually give a fuck about what they're saying right now. They will never put their money where their mouth is. The Democrats have full control of Congress and the White House right now. If they wanted gun control, they could fucking have it. And when the Republicans take office, if they really wanted to help the mental health care epidemic, which they're correct about in this country, when they have power, they won't fucking do it either. So they're both full of shit. They're both politicizing this to their own gains. And the elites, regardless of what colored tie they wear to work, don't give a shit about this stuff. If they did, they would go out there and actually pass legislation according to the rhetoric that they put out on Twitter, but they never do, even if they have majorities like the Democrats do right now. So that's the first point I'd like to make. Both parties are 100% full of shit, and they don't believe what they say when they go on opposite sides of this issue. They politicize it for their own means, and in a lot of ways, they're just catering to their voter base. And the Democrats are going to use this as a linchpin incident that they can run on and go anti-gun, gun control as their mainstay for the midterms. And you can bet your bottom dollar the Republicans will do the opposite. They'll, again, play defense on this one because they're the ones that are really pro-gun, are the Republicans, and they'll make it about mental health. What would they do if they actually cared about this stuff? And this is something that one of the squad members, if they were smart, which they're not, they're all fucking bunch of sold-out imbeciles. But if any one of them cared to actually get this done, they'd play outsider here, and they would make 2 standalone bills. One of them that has mild to moderate gun control, that is a Democratic-backed bill, and then they would craft another bill that makes mental health care in this country free, and prescription drugs that have to do with psychiatric disorders, prescribed drugs by a doctor for people that have schizophrenia and some of these other disorders that make them prone to doing this. They craft a bill that makes the Republicans also put their money where their mouth is, and then you couple them together. Remember, Build Back Better and the infrastructure bill, they were coupled together, right? Because the infrastructure bill was written by Republicans, and the Build Back Better bill was the democratically led bill that Biden was more on board for, that is now dead. You put them together, and you make it so that both parties have to get what they say they want done, they have to also take the other bill and vote both of them through. That's what if you're a savvy squad member, you could create both these bills, work with Republicans and Democrats on what they say they want on Twitter and publicly, and say, okay, Republicans think we need mental health care in this country to help prevent shootings. Fair enough. Democrats say we need some gun control. Fair enough. Let's do both. We'll make two standalone bills, we'll couple them together, and we'll make an agreement that both of them are going to pass. And the Republicans' job will be to sell they have to get their voters on board for mild gun control, but then they also get what they say they want, which is mental health care to prevent future shootings. And then Republican voters can go, okay, nobody's taking my guns away, and we're getting the mental health care that we say needs to be there for us to prevent school shootings. And then opposite for the Democrats. The Democrats will be required to sell to their voters, okay, we're going to also do a mental health care bill because the Republicans say that's what they want, but we're also going to get some form of gun control in exchange. And then you pass them both through Congress, and you know what? You might actually get something done. Now, are they going to do anything like that? Are the squad members going to do that? No. Is anybody in Congress going to do that? No. Because they don't give a shit about this stuff. It's all for political gain. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about people like us dying, poor people dying, kids. They don't give a fuck about it. Did Joe Biden give a shit about all of the kids that his government killed in Kabul on accident when they blew up that guy's car, who was a humanitarian, but they claimed was he was affiliated with like ISIS. He was a terrorist of some sort. No, they killed his entire family and him. They killed 7 kids, blew them to smithereens on his front lawn. Did he give a shit? No. The Pentagon audited themselves and found themselves not guilty of any wrongdoing. They don't give a shit about human life. So they're not going to actually do this. Now, that's what you would do if you were a savvy politician and an outsider, is you would create 2 standalone bills, one that helps give free mental health care and lower, if not free, prescription drug prices for psychiatrically dangerous or people that have a psychiatric disorder, so that they can get their meds and they can see their doctor regularly, and so that we can keep an eye on them and regulate their med levels. And then you get some sort of mild to moderate gun control that includes, like, again, what I mentioned earlier. It depends on how far you want to go. To me, it doesn't really matter. I would like to see, personally, a non-mandatory gun buyback system. I would like to see the gun show loophole and all that stuff closed. I would like to see, of course, background checks, stuff like that. You put those two together, you couple them, and you get everybody on board, because I think as voters, we can all agree that this is bad. We should not be pigeonholing ourselves into partisan politics. Let's do everything that can possibly reduce this stuff. And if you disagree with me, please leave a comment below. I'm always willing to read those. Now, lastly here, guys, what do I think we should do beyond what I've kind of just laid out there? You want to tear out the root of extremist activity and fanaticism, and the ability for people to be recruited into white supremacist groups and to be thrown down the rabbit hole the way that a lot of these shooters are. Is you got to fight poverty. Extremist activity finds fertile soil in highly impoverished nations. Chris Hedges makes this point perfectly in an old debate that he had with Sam Harris when they're talking about religious extremism, and Muslim extremist activity is what they're talking about. And Hedges makes the very astute claim, and I think he wins the debate in this case, that if you make it so that people live comfortably, They don't always have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck. They're not under constant anxiety. They don't feel like they're under the boot of the elites. They can live comfortably, feed their families, always pay their bills, and maybe have some fun on the side every once in a while, some expendable income. It's very difficult to radicalize people that are comfortable, i.e. white supremacists. You can't get people to go into white supremacist groups typically if they're living a comfortable life. Those people that end up in these groups are typically outsider kids who feel ostracized by society. They grow up in abusive households that are terribly impoverished, and they're looking for someone to blame. And then when somebody comes along and says, well, you need to blame brown people, or even adults where they lose their job or they're not getting paid enough at their job, so they're looking for a scapegoat, and people say, well, it's the immigrants' fault that you can't find a good job, or that you're not getting paid what you're worth because they're willing to work for less. People are easily radicalized when they don't make enough money, when they don't have all of the things that they need, like healthcare, taken care of. So you fight extremist activity, and you fight people ending up in highly anxiety-laden lifestyles that causes this stuff when they're doing well, when their parents are doing well as they grow up. A lot of these households that end up with traumatic experiences inflicted upon the kids, abusive lifestyles from the parents given down to their children, a lot of that has to do, again, with very impoverished areas and a lot of stress that does not need to be put onto those parents in the first place. Is it a be-all, end-all? No, but that's the way you rip extremist activity and fanaticism out at its root, is you have to fight poverty. You have to make sure people are comfortable. It's very difficult to radicalize people and very hard for them to lose their shit and do stuff like this if they have a comfortable lifestyle where they don't have to worry about health care, they don't have to worry about fixing their car or getting food on the table or taking care of their kids. So that's what we should be doing. If you wanted to really weed out this stuff and reduce it over the long term, you have to treat the citizenry of America, the United States, as human beings and stop putting them through relentless, unrelenting trauma. So that's my take. I have that same feeling about white supremacy. You can browbeat people all the time with these partisan politics shit, and it's never going to get anything done. If you actually want to get this stuff done in Congress, pass those two bills I talked about, create a standalone bill that helps with a little bit of gun control and a lot of mental health care, and you might actually take a chunk out of these events. But if you really want to fight it long term, do both those things, but you also have to give people a minimum wage. Medicare for all. Make mental health care, but all health care free. Make prescription drugs free, or at least reduce the prices of extremely expensive psychiatric medications. Then we'll take a chunk out of this. But the elites, I want you to understand, the elitists in this country that run this country, the politicians and the, big pharma, big oil, Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, they're by and large just sociopaths. So they don't give a shit about this stuff. They'll posture one way or another when they think it's politically advantageous to do so. You bet your bottom dollar the Democrats are going to use this shooting to their advantage in the midterms because the shock value is so traumatizing and gut-wrenching. It's going to be reactionary people immediately picking one side or the other, when I think it would be pragmatic for us to be like, how come we can't do both? How come the elitists in this country that actually pretend like they care about us, can't do a little bit of gun control and also a lot of mental health care? You can do both. And you can also help treat the root cause, which is poverty and immense wealth inequality that the United States is rampant with. So you guys might disagree with me. I hope that you can look at this without jumping on Team Red or Team Blue, because I think that there is no reason for us to, as a citizenry, the average citizen, to own weapons of war. But I'm not for unilaterally disarming the citizenry in this country, especially since Joe Biden's police state is highly militarized. We're on the verge of a totalitarian dystopia, and in a country where the police budget is nearly, I think it's almost $200 billion, which that's almost as much as China spends on their entire military. They spend $220 billion. In a country where the police are highly militarized, highly controlled by the elites, I'm not for like taking everybody's guns away. That seems ridiculous to me. That would put the citizenry at a great disadvantage and put them in danger with a militarized police force surrounding them. So I'm not for that. But, you know, the things I mentioned earlier as far as gun control, we can do that. We can also give people the mental health care that they need like that. If we had a motivated Congress, both of the parties could get what they rhetorically claim they're for tomorrow if they wanted to. But no, we're too busy giving $40 billion to Ukraine, which is going to pad the pockets of the military-industrial complex and the weapons contractors in this country, launder a whole bunch of money that we send over there so that the Ukrainians can buy weapons with it from our contractors. It's a money laundering scheme. And it'll end up necessarily, the money and the weapons will end up in the hands of Nazis who commit human rights atrocities left and right against children too. We're busy funding that shit. And Democrats don't seem to give a damn about that type of inhumanity. But when this type of inhumanity on our soil hits home, they're all for gun control. We live in a very sick country. And I wish I could tell you that I had any hope for the Congress actually passing some of these things that might actually help. They're not. They will, however, posture and go at each other and act like the other party is the problem when it's not. They're all the problem. And the sooner we realize that as the poor people in this country, the better. They're all the problem. So keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I really wish that I could get on here and give you some good news every day, but I only really can give you good news every once in a while, and I give you bad news every fucking day. And until we rise up, that's just going to be the way of things. I'll talk to you guys later.